On today's episode of The Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You, we're going to be talking about big business decisions and how they impact your small business. So you want to stay tuned for this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You. I am Lola Turner, CPA, and I am joined by my co-host today, Mr. Terrell Antonio Turner. Terrell, welcome back. Co-host.
Thank you for having me back.
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be here. That's a Coming to America reference for those who may or may not know. If you haven't go see the movie, this is not an ad for Coming to America. It is one of my favorite movies. However, how are you doing, Terrell?
In all honesty, I am recovering from a very serious flu. Tested negative for COVID,
It's not COVID.
so it's not COVID, but it's a very tough flu. So I am not my usual chipper self, and I've already been on camera and filming for like 4 hours already today. So I'm not my usual chipper self. I am excited though because some of the stuff that I was filming was with Flowcast. We're working on some great content there because season 2 of PBC will be coming out soon. So I was working on with the studio team on some awesome stuff there. But yeah, I'm good. I'm recovering.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to carry the energy for the group today. No, but I'm sure you're still gonna do a good job. And I'm just excited for some of the topics we're gonna talk about. So Flowcast is actually doing some pretty awesome things, like you said. PBS, the second episode is, or PBC, the second BBC, the second episode is second season is airing recently. And I think we actually just aired an episode last week with the team on the FNA show. So go check it out. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I do hope you feel better, Terrell. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things of focusing on the health. I mean, last week was a full week. I mean, I think with the grant program that was going on in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, where we were helping our clients get their stuff together to be qualified for a grant. And I think this is a very important point, is because some of the clients, they weren't using our accounting and bookkeeping services for 2021. And for the grant, you needed to submit your 2021 financial statements, balance sheet, P&L, and cash flow statements. You need to submit your tax return for 2021, and you needed to do your year-to-date financials for, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. Now, one of the things that a lot of them struggle with is they either weren't using an accountant last year, or the accountant they were using, wasn't providing regular financial statements. So they didn't have that information to submit. So, I mean, we were like down to the wire with, trying to get, all 6 of the companies that were in the Mecklenburg County, trying to get them ready to be able to file. I mean, it was a hard push, but it's something that I tell a lot of people because it's something that also happened, when it came down to the PPP loans, is if you don't have your financial statements in order, you could be disqualified for a lot of grant or even sometimes loan opportunities. So it is in your best interest to have your stuff in order. And if you're working with an accountant who just isn't doing it, I always tell people, make sure you get your stuff together. So for us, last week was tough. I mean, we were doing like 16-hour days. And then one of our clients celebrated their 40th birthday. So we went to, as a client and a really good friend of mine, we went to celebrate, his birthday. My mother had knee replacement surgery, was there for her, got home, woke up Monday morning, and the flu was upon me.
Yeah, it was definitely a busy week. And I think to going back to the point on the grants, like one thing that I have realized as well is that is not the time for you to be trying to get your financials in check. It is just not. And I saw the same exact situation with some of the small business programs that we were helping with in our local community area, where it's like, especially with the PPP loan, where people are then trying to scramble, put together financials, and it's like this is not the time for you to be scrambling because what you don't under like I think what people don't realize is at that point you're paying like premium price for like rushed financials, and oftentimes you have a higher tendency of it being done incorrectly, and you just don't I mean you don't want to do that because this is money that is going to help drive your business forward, and so you don't want to put it at risk because hey you didn't have the right financial numbers um, because you didn't
Yeah.
get the right accountant or you just didn't have an accountant at all, period.
Yeah. I mean, and rightfully so. You should be paying a premium
Oh yeah.
for such the time crunch. And so one of the things that I advise people is if you're working with an account, because we're getting close to the end of the year, so taxes are on people's mind, or tax
Mhm.
returns, or that whole
Mhm.
process are on people's mind. One of the things that that I've been working on it, and we'll probably release a diagram of this. I think about it as like your financial triangle, where you have your bookkeeper on one end, you have your tax preparer here, and then you have your financial advisor here, to where your bookkeeper is doing the books for your business on a regular basis. They should be communicating, or at least have a line of communication to your tax accountant to say, hey,
Mhm.
here's what's
Mhm.
going on in their business. What tax advice do you have for them before we get to the end of the year? And then also talking to the financial advisor, hey, here's what's going on in their business. What financial advice do you have for the client? That way, the client sits in the middle of all three of those, and the client is getting the best financial, information, the best financial insight, so the client can win in their finances. But I think a lot of bookkeepers don't have their processes down. So
Yeah.
they're struggling to get work done, or they're not getting the work done. So they don't have time to reach out to these other people. And I'm like, you know what? That's something that your bookkeeper could be doing. And it's very easy, even if it's just a simple email. But I think a
Yep.
lot of times, people, and it comes down to their finances, their accounting, their bookkeeping, it's just not in any type of order or any type of regular cadence for them to really get ahead. So they end up rushing for like deadlines and stuff when they're trying to get things done on the back end.
Yeah, and that's one thing actually that we've gotten feedback from several of the tax accountants that we've worked with about how, working with us has been a lot easier. Like we make it. I know we ran into one of the tax accountants we work with over the weekend, and she was like, "Yeah, honestly, this is probably the best." She said, "This is probably the most put together financials I've ever gotten in doing, working with this particular individual." And I think for me, one of the things that I realized is it's such an easy way, like for as a bookkeeper, to set yourself apart is just being more proactive about those conversations because at the end of the day, it makes it's all in the best interest of your client, right? When the financial advisor is giving them advice that is based on actual numbers versus just hey, general advice or whatever, but it's actionable advice based on the numbers and the results of their business. And then their tax accountant gets that information in time, can review it with them throughout the year and say, hey, based on where your numbers are, this is something you kind of need to pay attention to going into the end of the year or going through the rest of the year. So definitely important. But we are not going to digress too far here. So let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. So today we're actually talking about big business and the impact that it has on your small business. So there's been a lot, Terrell, going on in the news just with like we talked about last week, like earnings calls, big businesses talking about their results, a lot of projections on slowdown, on hey, a lot of businesses adjusting their strategy as they kind of brace for I guess the recession or brace for some of the impacts like supply chain and stuff like that is happening in their business. And then on Friday, the announcement came through on Twitter. So I guess what has been kind of your reaction when you saw the Twitter purchase going through, or just what's been your reaction overall of just some of the things that are going on as far as big businesses go in the news?
So I will say is I'm going to be completely honest about what my reaction has been.
I wouldn't expect anything
Some of
less.
it, some of it will be, I guess, some of it,
Controversial.
some people may say is a political opinion. Some people may say it's a business opinion. Some people may just say whatever. But I think my first reaction has been laughter. Of just the
What?
amount of
Please
people
provide more
that are
context.
I think the amount of people that are freaking out about,
The Twitter purchase.
about changes happening at,
Mm,
with big companies, like when with leadership changes happening at big companies. And part of the reason I say laughter is because, I've worked in Fortune 500 companies. I've seen, a very high profile CEOs move in and out of companies. And I mean, I've been in investor relations, having to get on the phone with Wall Street analysts when we had a high profile CEO, removed from the company. Well, I guess technically he wasn't removed, but he was removed.
he was walked out.
And and his leadership team, they were removed prior to him.
Yeah.
Board of director members were removed, and there was this massive change. And one of the things that I don't think people realize is, even though you may change some key leaders in different businesses, like, big businesses still have bureaucracy. Like,
Hmm.
there is it will take some time for some of the changes that people want to see happen. It'll take time for that to kind of trickle down through the organization before it actually directly, has a significant impact on the customers and the users. Like, some of this stuff does take a little bit of, trial and tweaking and adjusting
Hmm.
before that plays out. So I think people freaking out that, oh my gosh, like all these changes are going to happen immediately, and it's just like, that's probably not going to be the case. So that's one reason why I say laughter. The other thing is, I do think that, it's been very interesting to see Twitter talk a lot, or let's say to see Elon Musk talk a lot about the monetization strategy for Twitter. Because
Hmm.
prior to this, I mean, there may have been some people who talked about it, but you usually did not hear a lot of people talk about the monetization strategy of Twitter.
Yeah.
And I think for Twitter to be such a big company, like, that is an important conversation to have.
A big public company at that, which means that they have people that are invested in the public, that are invested in their best interests and actually want to see a return. So I think that's even bigger than, having a private company. And yeah, so definitely was very surprising to me. Um, I think almost, and I think this comes down to a point that I kind of want to dive into a little bit more is maybe not on this episode, but I think one of the things that I've realized, and maybe working in bigger companies has kind of helped give this perspective to both of us. And I think this is going to be important to you, to the audience, as business owners, to understand this is, I think a lot of times there is so much emphasis on the social aspect of a business. And a lot of times people forget that at the end of the day, the business is about delivering results. The business is about delivering a good performance. And in the case of Twitter, before it became a private company, was about making money for shareholders and stockholders. So I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on, at least the things that I've seen on the news, there's been a lot of focus on the specifically for Elon Musk and Twitter, the, hey, the whole freedom of speech and how this is what this is going to mean with what Twitter signifies, and a lot of, the audience spending time on Twitter and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's good, but at the end of the day, Twitter is a business. And if you're thinking about it as a small business owner, it's like, hey, the social stuff is great, But at the end of the day, you need to make money. And at the end of the day, you need to deliver. And especially if you have employees, like, so you need to think about the strategy that makes the most sense for your business to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot to that. I mean, because I always say, I mean, step number one is you got to make enough money to survive. I mean, if
Right.
you're constantly losing money, then you may not be around very long. Like there's only so
Hmm.
long because the thing is, if you start a business or let's say you grow the business and you're losing money, that means somebody else is giving you money to cover the gap. And it's
Exactly.
only so long that that's going to last until, those people or that person says, "Hey, I'm not giving any more money into this, because it just keeps going down." So I
Right.
think at a minimum, you got to make enough money to survive. And then I think also is if you're going to scale your business, you got to make enough money that's worth all the hassle because
Hmm.
the amount of, I mean, from financial terms, you may hear it referred to as the hurdle rate. And then I think from, just a plain layman's term is, am I making enough money to be worth it? And the best way I think about that is if somebody said, "Hey, I will pay you $100,000, but you have to risk your life every single day for 8 hours a day," most people would be like, I, I
Is
don't
it a
know about
hundred
that.
thousand dollars a day? Because gladly, maybe not
I
$100,000
will
a
say,
year.
because I'll be honest. Even if someone came to me and said, "We'll pay you $100,000 a week, but your
Okay.
life is going to be literally on the line 8 hours a
Every
day,"
single time.
I would say,
That's a
you know what?
lot.
Even if you paid me $100,000 a day, I don't know if I would do that because if my life is constantly on the line 8 hours a day, every day that I'm working, I mean, I'm like, I think people start to make that trade off decision to say,
Yeah.
what I'm getting is not worth what it's costing me to do it. And so
Mhm.
I do think, it's very interesting, I think, for, a business like Twitter, which I think we're seeing. And I tell, even as the accountant talking to business owners, this isn't something you typically hear an accountant say. But one of the things that I do tell them is, I'm like, first is you got to make sure you control or do what you can to control the narrative of who your company is and what you do. Because if you allow other people to define you, like, I don't think that the people who, were leading Twitter really wanted to be seen as, well, we are the public square. I think they probably latched on to that thinking like, oh, this will help us out. But what they didn't, when they lost control of that,
Yeah.
now when they're trying to think about their monetization strategy, people are like, oh my gosh, like, how can you do this? No, you're the public square, and the public square should be free. And it's just
Right.
like, to me, I'm like, that is like a label that I think they should have thought twice about adopting. Is if you're going to be, if you're going to let, other people who aren't thinking about your business as a whole define who you are and what you do, I mean, I think you could be setting yourself in a dangerous area because at some point it's going to get down to where you need to think about the monetization strategy and you need
Mhm.
to think about how you're managing your fixed and variable costs. When
Yeah.
it gets down to stuff like that, you probably aren't going to be having as many social conversations. You're going to be having hard conversations about numbers. But I think if you don't own the narrative for who you are as a business and what you do, it can make it very difficult for you to make the necessary changes just for your business to even break even.
Yeah, and I think also just the I was very surprised when I found out, which I mean, I was surprised at the percentage. I found out that 90% of Twitter's revenue comes from ads. I mean, it makes sense. But another thing that I thought about is, man, like if I was your accountant, I guess a small business accountant, I'd be like, it's kind of important to understand, like, how often, and again, I don't know, maybe the former executives at Twitter had a conversation and said, hey, you know, how are we making money? is this 90% of our revenue coming from ads? Does that really make sense? But for me, that just seems like a really risky play, because what happens, if some of the policy changes around ads, like that's one of the things that we're seeing now, is where there's an increased focus on privacy. So like a lot of customers can elect to see, hey, I want to see, I feel comfortable sharing my data. I don't feel comfortable sharing my data, where you actually have, like, on your iPhone devices, you have the option to choose that. And so what it's doing is now companies are being restricted on their visibility. And if I'm being restricted on my visibility, like, why would I spend money to pay for, ads that are going to, have a less conversion rate, when I can maybe, I don't know, do it, instead of doing it on Twitter, I can do it on maybe TikTok, just as an example. And so I think for me, ultimately, like, thinking about this from an accountant's perspective or from a business advisor, stuff your accountant isn't telling you is, are you looking at understanding the composition of your revenue, like how your business is making money? Is that something that you're evaluating on a regular basis? Like, do you understand that? Because at the end of the day, the revenue is good, but like also the source of revenue, I think, is the whole having too many eggs in one basket, to where if something happens there or something changes, like Twitter would have been completely put in a position where I think we're seeing with Facebook now, where there's less ad revenue coming in, and it's impacting the business, because all of it is based on, how the business is all based on the advertising revenue, and how businesses are interacting with that.
I mean, and I will say is, from a slightly different perspective, I don't think it's a bad thing to be so heavy on advertising, because if we think about it, your television stations are, I mean, their main source of revenue is ads and
Mhm,
sponsorship. I mean, and
mhm.
they have survived. Radio stations, I mean, podcasts. There are
Survived is
so many.
subjective on TVs, but yeah.
But I mean, when you think about it, like, many of them are profitable. So when I
This
say
Okay,
survive,
fair.
meaning like they've either made enough money or they've had enough money injected into them to be able to last for years upon years to exist. And I don't think that, advertising is a bad area, because I mean, a lot of money goes into advertising. Where I
Mhm,
think the challenge with Twitter is, when and this is something I think every business should do, and your accountant or bookkeeper or CFO should have these type of conversations with you, is really what I like to do with clients, is really lay it out, say, okay, all right, how do you make money? And if we list out the ways that you make money, for example, with Twitter, how do you make money? Ad revenue. Okay, what in your is anything in your corporate strategy going to hurt you in that area? Now, if you look at this, their public messaging about, well, we're the public square, and you look at this messaging about, well, we want to create a space where, people can have conversations, and there's all these stories about how their policies about them taking certain specific type of content down, or how are they policing different types of content? The question is, if ad revenue is the core way that you make money, are your actions on your non-revenue strategies hurting that advertising revenue? Because when businesses start hearing about, well, they're snatching down certain ads, which means they're constantly in this controversy, they're going to lose viewership. Why should I spend more money on showing my ads on this page? I'm like, that's where you have to combine your financial understanding and your business strategy, and you got to make sure you find a way, that something that makes sense and that works, because I think a lot of businesses are struggling with that. Like, and I talk to some businesses about that, when they're looking at how do you make money, and then what public image or what messages are you trying to promote. And I've had
mhm.
to check some businesses, because they say they want to be profitable and they want to make money, but then when you look at all their messaging, it's like, you guys are messaging yourself like you're a nonprofit organization. I'm like,
That's
that's not
Yeah.
going to help you.
That's what actually I was gonna say, is I think you need to understand for how you're messaging yourself, like, is that where your biggest customer base is? Right? Like, who does your messaging resonate with? And I think that automatically will impact what your financial revenue or your revenue for your business will be. Because if your messaging and your branding is appealing to a target audience that is not going to help you generate and meet the revenue goals that you have, then it's probably something you need to evaluate. So the question is, then do you say, okay, hey, like, going back to the surviving, like, does me messaging this, like, does me messaging my business this way appeal to the right target audience that I'm trying to target? If the answer is no, then you have two options. One, you change your strategy, or two, if you don't want to change your strategy, then you might need to downsize your business to reflect the actual customer base that your messaging is targeting.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that that one becomes a challenging one because I think you have to get really good at, you know, understanding who is the target audience that you are trying to attract. Now, when it comes down to platforms like Twitter, it's a little different because their business model is a little different because
Hmm.
the people they're trying to attract to the platform are not the people who are paying. People they're trying to attract are the people who are there, who are the audience who are going to view the ads. So it's like your consumer and your paying customer are not the same people all the time in, those types of business models. And I think if that's your business model, you got to make sure that, hey, you are finding a strategy that makes sense. Now, I would say for us, like, our target audience would be service-based businesses, so like law firms. And so one of the things I would say in that case is, like, for a couple of law firms I've worked with is, hey, if you're doing a family law case and you're representing this person in the divorce, the person who's paying you is the person who is also your client. Now,
Right.
if you're doing some type of court appointed case, the person you're representing is not the one that's paying you. The state is paying you, or the city or the county is paying you. So I think one is you have to understand, like, how are you making money and
Right.
what do those dynamics look like, and make sure that, hey, whatever your business strategy is not hurting your monetization strategy at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's a good point and that's good perspective. So I think I'm interested to kind of see with the I think Elon Musk, the feedback was, going back to, I guess, diversifying the portfolio of, not having as much of an emphasis on ad revenue driving the business. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works. I think the subscription model is something that a lot of businesses are pushing for, or I'm seeing a lot of big businesses move towards. And so I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to play out. But I think more importantly, like Terrell and I said, as a small business owner, when we go back to ultimately stuff your accountant should be telling you or isn't telling you, is you really need to understand, first of all, how your business makes money. So, like, understanding the composition of that. And then you also need to just, are you reviewing your pricing strategy and asking, like, does this still make sense for your business? And then I think just understanding, like you said, Terrell, the point of, does your does your branding or the messaging that you are trying to communicate, does that align with the audience that you're trying to reach and sell to? Because if they're misaligned, then it's not matching and you're more likely to end up spending money on things or targeting or focusing on certain areas that don't really yield you the profit that your business wants to see.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in, that's kind of what we've seen with Twitter now. One of the other things that I think it kind of cascades of what we see happening with Twitter also, I think, has an impact on other major companies,
Mhm.
social media or media companies, period. Like, it's making me keep an eye on Facebook
Mm.
because an area that I think that accountants are not talking to their business owner clients enough about is, are you really getting a good ROI on your marketing activity? And
Mm.
when you start looking at Facebook, some time ago, you saw ad revenue, or recommendations to spend on ads on Facebook kind of went down a little bit. But I think now it seems like, the visibility of even the content we post, or
Yeah.
the visibility, I guess you would say the RO, the potential number of people you can get your content in front of seems to be increasing, which means like, hey, with a little bit of a marketing budget, you could start to see a better return on investment. So, what have been kind of your thoughts when, or have you even been thinking about Facebook at all?
Yeah, I've been thinking about Facebook a lot actually because I've noticed over the last, I'd probably say 5 to 6 weeks, there's been a lot more just personally for us and the Business Talk Library. There's been a lot more engagement on the stuff that we post on like our page on Facebook. And I think for a while, Facebook for us was kind of the if you're posting it on LinkedIn, post it on Facebook. But recently I started noticing there was a lot more engagement, like comments, people liking stuff. And that hasn't really been the case, I'd probably say, over the last year, year and a half, probably more than that, before COVID. And so for me, I think what it tells me is okay, there's a lot more organic reach, which is great. And if there's a lot more organic reach, what does that mean for paid reach? Right. So that tells me, maybe, hey, it's cheaper and I'm more likely to get a higher ROI. But I plan to, but I haven't actually tested it. So I'm kind of curious to see visibility wise what that percentage conversion looks like for us, our business specifically, when we run ads on Facebook compared to what it was before. But I think that's a conversation
Absolutely.
we need to be having. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that even as you think about what's happening with Twitter, there's so many different eyes there. I mean, you know, there are some, prominent people who are saying, oh, if Elon Musk buys, I'm leaving Twitter. Then part of the question that some of the other social platforms are asking is, well, where are they going to go?
Right.
Because if they do leave Twitter, do they take their audience with them, and which platform is going to catch, which platform is going to see more growth? Now, my honest opinion is I don't think that they're leaving Twitter. I think they're going to stay. But I do think other platforms are looking at like, hey, whatever pricing strategy Twitter comes out with, if
Mhm.
Twitter makes a subscription model work, then other platforms are probably looking at a similar thing, because right now the driving revenue source for these other platforms is ad revenue.
Ads.
But
Yep.
if a subscription model could work for Twitter, then some of the other platforms could look at that. And for small businesses, where I think that becomes an important thing to look at is paying attention to the competitors that are within your sector. Like,
Mhm.
one of the things that, like I said, we work with a lot of law firms. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is going to some of the law firm conferences and actually checking out like what's going on, like what's happening in the industry. Like, I was at the Clio conference, and at the Clio conference, they released a report called the Clio report, or the legal
Legal
trends
legal
report.
trend report. Yep.
And so I'm going to do an episode all about like, hey, here's some of the things that I found in the trend report. But one of the things that I found in sitting in some of those sessions is people get a lot of value from, just knowing what's happening in my industry, paying
Right.
attention to competitors. And I think not enough small businesses pay attention to their competitors to have an idea about, hey, how can we possibly tweak our business to open us up to more opportunities?
No, that's good. That's good. I think that's important for like Facebook and some of the other platforms. I'm actually curious on a personal side to see how they're going to navigate this because if it works for Twitter, I don't know how many subscribers are on Twitter. I don't use Twitter, how many accounts are on Twitter. But I'm interested to see then because I think people are really gonna have to choose if people try to go towards a subscription model. Do you really want to have like 6 different subscriptions that you're paying for each account? Because then I think people are gonna get selective about really understanding like where they like what adds the most value to them when they're
But I,
selecting
I
it.
I honestly think that people have a very high appetite for low cost subscriptions,
Oh
because I mean, if
yeah,
you think about the
$8 a
number
month
of
is
I mean, because when you think about it, like people who have a subscription to Amazon Prime,
that's true.
Netflix,
That's true.
Hulu, Paramount,
HBO Max. You're right. You're
yeah,
right.
HBO Max, Apple TV. Like there are
That's
some people
true.
who have subscription, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, like I have
Yeah.
like multiple subscription, and then what ends up happening is Verizon Wireless comes out with a plan that says, "Hey, if you get this phone plan, you get Disney Plus, you get Hulu, you get ESPN." And it's just like, "Okay, sure." So now we got Netflix, Amazon Prime, ESPN, Hulu, Disney Plus. We
Oh
got
gosh.
Paramount. We probably got something else that I've just forgotten about. And I think people do have a high tolerance for, low cost subscription model things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that other companies are probably looking at this saying, how is Twitter going to make it work? Because I don't think other companies are ready to just jump out there with Twitter. But I think Twitter is going to figure out a way to, balance their income and expenses is what they're really going to have to do, because they just been losing a lot of money. And if they don't
Yeah.
balance their income and expenses, then Twitter's probably not going to be around for a very long time.
Yeah, and I think also I'm interested I think they have a bit of an advantage here because now they get to do it well with little visibility because now they're a private company and they don't have to worry about the stock going up or down depending on, some of the decisions that they make. So they can really, I think they can really test it, even if it's like with a small population, see how it works, and then decide if they want to kind of make it Twitter wide. So it should be interesting to see how that works.
Yep. I mean, I think it will be. I mean, and I think all of that is, people may say, that's big business. What does that have to do with me? I'm running a $3 million business. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar business. So they may say, hey, I'm running a business that's doing 30,000 a month, or I'm running a business that's doing 10 grand a month. I think the big pieces there, I think of really when it comes down to your business, it's really looking at your monetization strategy. Like,
Hmm.
how are you making money and what opportunities do you have? I mean, to be, completely transparent, that's something that we've been thinking about in the TL Turner group is when we look at, hey, how are we making money? Last year, when we looked at our numbers, last year we had a significant amount of money coming from one-on-one consulting and CFO work. When we looked at that and we realized that, or I looked at it and realized, like, hey, to scale that, it would take hiring another me, or it would take hiring, cloning me. And I'm just like, you know what, based on the structure of our team, that wasn't the best decision for me to go find another me to do that type of work. So what we ended up doing is taking a step back and saying, what work is our team capable of? And
Hmm.
what work can our team actually scale and grow more? So we leaned a little bit more heavy into doing the bookkeeping and that type of stuff. And the team is doing an amazing job of scaling that. Like, all the revenue that we walked away from doing like the one-on-one consulting, we've about I'd say what, not 10 months now, we've just about recovered all the revenue that we walked away from, but we did it in a scalable way. And
Yeah.
then what that also did is it opened us up to look at other opportunities of creating revenue, like whether it's courses or doing more speaking engagements or
Hmm.
creating tools and resources. So, I mean, I think every small business should really sit down and pretty much just, draw out on a piece of paper, how do you make money, and really start to think about, your monetization strategy in a better way.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I think also the next step after drawing up that list of, hey, how do you make money, is when you think about one, how do you make money? Two, where are you good at like making money? So like we assessed our team's strength. And then three, is there a market for it? Right. Because I think for us, it was really great because there are a lot of people that just want the basic bookkeeping. right? There's a lot of people that just need that. They're at the point where they need that, where they can't really, their business isn't at the point where they can pay for the CFO services and the consulting, like some of the tier pricing stuff that we have. And so for us, it worked well. So I think it's important while you're assessing that to also understand, like, okay, how do I then match what I'm really good at to where the demand is? Because then that helps kind of make sure that your business is surviving and thriving, and you have that recurring revenue that you need to kind of help drive your business forward.
Absolutely. I mean, and I, I want to do, I want to just brag on, like the marketing team, my marketing team, because, in the process of doing that, like we were thinking about, okay, all right, what can we do? I call it the factory. So the factory
Mhm.
would be like the senior accountant, the bookkeepers, like that side of the house is what I call the factory. Like that's where the work gets done. And with working with the team is thinking about like what can we do to, one is we want to help small businesses, want to help, provide a resource. Now, they may not be at the price point of some of our larger customers, or let's say some of our probably average customers that we deal with. But they still need some sense of support from a quality bookkeeper, because there's a lot of crappy bookkeepers out there. There are a lot of
That is true.
crappy accountants out there. And sometimes people just need a little bit of help. So I want to brag on my marketing team because they came up with this awesome website. So if you are, listening and you're not viewing, you're missing out. What I will tell you is go to YouTube and go to about what I think this will probably be like 40 minutes into the conversation. And you
Yep.
can see the image of the awesome website that they have built for the small business program. And one of the first things you notice is like, when it talks about 89% of small businesses credit higher success to working with a good accountant. Like, I mean, if you think about that, the number of successful businesses out of that, 89% of them said that working with a good accountant is something that, helps lead to better success in their business. And so the team has done a great job of really putting together this awesome site, really answering some critical questions for people who are trying to figure out, like, is this the right program? And in transparency, we've actually put what the prices and what the numbers are. Now,
Yes.
what I will say is this is another one of those things of what we talked about earlier is you have to understand your numbers for your business because you can't run a loss. So one of the things that we recognize is like, okay, all right, we will not survive at price points. Our business will not survive at price points like this if everybody got these price points. So one of the things that we decided was, okay, we do want to help more small businesses. So we can probably free up enough capacity for about 15 small businesses to be able to, take advantage of these types of prices. Now we do have some criteria in there for who qualifies as a small business. But I think it's just one of the things that we talked about earlier of when you're looking at, like I said, a business like Twitter, like they had to look at their monetization strategy. They also had to look at their internal costs to see what makes sense. Because I think, you can have some sense of a social agenda or a social, I guess you say a social impact as related to your business. But I do think you have to look at that in the total picture and say, hey, we can't be a for-profit company acting like a nonprofit. Like we can be a for-profit company that does have some social justice or some social impact aspects to it, but we do have to put some parameters around it because we have to survive and grow as a business. And so one of the things that we came up with was that small business program and limiting it to 15 business owners that are in that category. Now, we currently have 3 businesses that are already in that category, which means we got 12 spots left. Now, after those 12 spots are up,
By the time this airs, we'll
um
probably have less, but yes.
But I will say is, but I mean, the good thing about it is what I'm pretty excited about is the things that we're talking about here, like the monetization, thinking about the monetization strategy for your business. Like, we had those type of conversations with our clients. And one of the things that our clients are seeing is their revenue is growing. So they don't stay in that, sub small business category too long,
Yeah.
because as you are having these type of conversations with your accountant and your finance people, it really starts to open your eyes to other opportunities. And I remember, like, there was one business when they came to us, they were doing maybe about $16,000 in revenue a month. Like, we started working together. There were some questions we started asking them. We started digging into some of their numbers. Now they're doing double that a month. I mean, actually,
Mhm.
last month they hit about 45,000 in revenue,
That's
and
awesome.
that was their first time hitting 45,000 a month in revenue, and they're continuing to grow. And part of it is because of the conversations that we're having
That's
and
it
the
right
way
there.
that they're able to take those conversations and turn them into actions that can grow their business.
That's it right there. That's really, really good point. I want to say two things. Number one, for those people that are interested in the program, we will put it in the notes. Like I mentioned, this episode is probably going to air the second week of November. So if there's still spot space left, then hey, we can sign, you can potentially get in. It is stuffyouraccountantisn'ttellingyou.com/small business program. So once you access that, you should be able to see the options, read a bit more. And like Terrell said, we are very transparent about the pricing. We have some free resources there, and you can actually read reviews of the services that we offer. Because for us, like one of the things that I'm a big believer in, and I say this all the time, is yes, there are crappy accountants, but there are also crappy customers. So we want to make sure that, hey, for us, it's extremely important that we're vetting people. And hey, it's all about you vetting us as well, making sure that you're the right fit for us and we're the right fit for you. And so I think, like, as of when we're filming this, we have 13 spots left. And hey, if you hear this,
12 spots.
I'm sorry, 12. Look at me. I'm the accountant. I should be doing this right. 15 minus 3 is 12. We have 12 spots left as of when we're filming this. And so definitely check out the website. And if it goes and you get in, then that means that, there's a spot left for you and we can go through the process of evaluating if you're a good fit for the business. That was one
Yep.
thing I
And,
wanted to say.
and one of the things that I will say to this, which I think is interesting, is because I've talked to a couple of accounting firm owners that have looked at this, or that I've had conversations with, and when I started talking about this, they were like, "Oh my gosh, no, you should not do that. That is a horrible idea. That is a bad idea." And it's like, I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
One of the things that, like said, but what they don't grasp is that, what we figured out. One is how to get our factory efficient so that we
Hmm.
can do this in a way that still makes financial sense for us. But
Right.
then also, we recognize that the companies that we've been working with at this level, like, they're growing. Like, they
Hmm.
don't stay in this small business area like too long. I mean, like I said, fast they're growing in a very healthy way, because we're not just doing the bookkeeping. And I think that that's one of the conversations that I think, the stuff that your accountant isn't telling you is that they're not having conversations with you about what can help you move forward, like really taking a good look at your monetization strategy. If they're not, talking to you about your monetization strategy or how you're making money, if that's not a conversation that's coming up, then they may be doing some stuff in the background, but they might not be the best fit for you. So you
Yeah.
probably want to really consider, like, hey, is this person really helping me move my business forward? Like, I don't want them to just send me PDFs at the end of the month that, hey, here's what your profit and loss looks like, or hey, here's what your balance sheet looks like. It's like, no, help me understand, what should I be paying attention to here if I'm going to move my business forward to the next level? And I think those are the type of conversations that you should expect from people who have intimate knowledge about the numbers of your business, is conversations that help lead you to the next level of growth in your business.
Yes, agreed. Any last thoughts for this week's Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You episode?
I will say is I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I need to take some medicine and go to bed. So I did my best to give you guys the high energy version of me. This is the high energy when I am recovering from the flu. So if you are watching the video, you probably saw me not as energetic as I normally am. But know that I still love you and I will be back next week
Yes.
with
Yes.
way more excitement and way more wisdom, insight, and stories to share. So thank you guys so much. And then I will also say, last week, I do want to say thank you so much. At the time of recording this, last week, there was a post that we shared from the Stuff Your Accounting Isn't Telling You.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think within like 2 days, it got like 22,000, views on it
On
because
LinkedIn, yeah.
all of you love what we are sharing and you are telling other people about it, to where it's like, to get 22,000 views on clips from this show in a matter of 3 days, that is huge. That is
That is pretty
awesome.
awesome.
And thank you
Woo!
so much for being viewers of this show.
Yes.
And I promise we will continue to be back with more exciting and high energy. So until next time.
Hey, it's your girl Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Right here on RETV every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week, because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?